Andrew, we're 10 games into the season, and that means it's time to definitively decide who can win the NBA championship this year. And you might be out there doubting me, say, no, that's not true. My team isn't doing well right now. I don't want to talk about that. It doesn't matter. It's the early season. Who cares? Well, if you want to win the NBA championship, it does matter how you play in your first 10 games, your first 5 games, even. So we're going to look at something I'm calling resume for a ring, because if you go back, and I did, to 1971, the reason I went back that far is because, you can look at the NBA standings by date on Basketball Reference, which is a very cool thing. You can see by date what each team's record was. The ability to do that on Basketball Reference goes back to 1971, which is why I stopped there. But that gives us 53 years worth of data. And I looked at every single NBA champion, and what you find is that these teams, they share some qualities. All of them across the board, all 53 teams. Now, I did this last year, and when we got to the end of the year, we had whittled it down to 2 teams who met all this criteria, had a resume for a ring, and it was Boston and Milwaukee. Now, you might say, hold on a second, Alex. I don't remember either of those teams winning last year, and that's correct. Denver did break one of the rules, which was very exciting. However, it's a rule that's very easy to adjust. The rule was that no champion has ever had worse than the 9th best odds coming into the season. And that goes back to the 84-85 season. Now, last year I said it was no champion had ever had worse than the 8th best odds. And that team was the Golden State Warriors in 2015, who actually had the longest odds of any of these champions. They were plus 2,800. Last year, Denver sat 9th. And they were plus 1,800. And so they technically broke that mold. But on the other hand, they didn't have the longest odds. Toronto in 2019, they were plus 1,850. And then the 2011 Dallas Mavericks were plus 2,000. So we're adjusting it slightly. We're saying that no champion has ever had worse than the 9th best odds in preseason. Just by doing that, that rules out teams such as the Dallas Mavericks, playing very well right now, Cleveland Cavaliers, Sacramento Kings, New York Knicks, and most interestingly, team that's been very hot, the Minnesota Timberwolves. People are already talking about the Wolves as, a dark horse candidate for a ring. Nope, sorry. According to this, no. But then we get to the records. So this is pretty interesting. After 5 games, just 5 games, no NBA champion going back to 1971, 53 years, has ever started out 1-4 or 0-5. It's never happened in the last 53 years. Never. Now that right there rules out the Miami Heat, who started out 1-4, are on a 7-game winning streak. They look amazing. Everything's going great.
This is just champion, though, not like finalist.
Exactly. You can still make the finals. And in fact, I will say, if Miami had somehow won the finals last year, I would probably not be doing this segment, because they would have broken every rule. They would have destroyed every rule of every previous championship. Okay, so that rules out Miami. The second thing is that once you get to 10 games, now you're really learning a lot. No champion has ever had fewer than 4 wins in their first 10, meaning they've never been 3-7, 2-8. And actually, you look back, there's really only one team who was 4-6. That was the 1978 Washington Bullets, who are kind of the greatest outlier of any NBA champion. They started out 2-3, then they went 4-6. They only won, I think, 43 or 44 games that year. Their net rating was like barely positive. They were a plus 0.9. They kind of looked like the Miami team of last year in the regular season, but they actually ended up winning the championship. If you take them out of it, then every team's been at least 500 through their first 10 games. But because of that, we get to rule out, and this won't shock anyone, the Los Angeles Clippers. They're gone, Andrew. Yeah. They were doing great. They were 3-2. They were 3-2 through their first 5, and then something happened.
I was going to say, what happened?
Something changed. By the way, did you see, as we're recording, Chris Haynes reporting that Russell Westbrook has said he's willing to, not just that he's willing to come on the bench, he's offering to come off the bench.
Wow.
To make it easy for the Clippers. That's pretty nice. Nice of him.
I'm sure that's exactly how it happened. I'm sure that there was no discussion. He just stepped up. He just volunteered. Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
sure that that's exactly how it happened. I'm sure.
Interesting. So you think this is like when they fire a coach and instead of it coming out as a firing, they say like mutually agreed to part ways.
Oh
You think
yeah, this is mutually agreed to part from the starting lineup. Absolutely, it is.
interesting.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah, I mean
Well,
there was talks before the Harden trade even happened, or the day that it happened, that Russ was willing to come off the bench then. So
yeah.
like this has been a talking point that's existed for a long time.
Well,
So
they've finally seen enough.
they've seen
6
enough,
losses.
and
This is it.
Russell. I mean, it's good that they want to get Russell some good press, but like let's get real here.
It is kind of a bummer. I mean, listen, it was only 5 games, but that early season Clippers, they were kind of interesting. I kind of liked them. It was
They
fun. It
were
was like,
good.
oh, they're
They were
kind of
legitimately good, and they messed it up. Now they can't win the title.
now they can win the title. Sorry, those are the rules. Now, so those are the only teams that we have to cross out, which means, I mean, obviously there's a ton of teams we're crossing out.
Yeah,
OKC,
yeah, yeah,
Houston,
yeah.
like all these teams
They're
at
all
the bottom
crossed out.
of
Yes.
the odds, all those teams are gone. But that leaves us with 7 championship contenders, true championship contenders who so
Okay.
far have a resume for a ring, and that is Boston, Denver, Phoenix, who just squeaked by. They are 4 and 6
Woo,
in their first 10, but
woo.
they made it. They're like Indiana Jones sliding under that door. They just made it. Milwaukee, Golden State, the Lakers, and the Philadelphia 76ers. So we've already narrowed it
Wow.
down to 7 teams. One of those 7 teams will win the NBA championship this year.
Wow.
And if they don't, it
Book
will
it.
be very exciting, actually. And, going back to what Denver did last year, they broke the mold in the sense that they had the 9th best odds. But I actually think as I was going back through the preseason odds, what you realize is like that was more of a reflection of the parity in the league because
Sure.
you go back a few years, like especially during like the Warriors Cavs era, and like it just it didn't matter. Like the odds were so stacked against the rest of the league.
Oh yeah.
Whereas now, like they were 9th last year and still had plus 1,800 odds. So yeah, I do think the odds are less important than these other factors. Um, and so who knows? Maybe a team like a Minnesota could jump up and break that again because there is so much parity in the league nowadays. Um, but yeah, in terms of like how well you do after 5 and after 10, that has been very consistent over the last
Hmm.
53 years. So
That's
I'll
wild.
come back to this. There's
Okay.
there's some stats after 41 games, so we'll revisit, see if any other teams can be cut. I'm also going to be digging and see if there's any other qualities of an NBA championship that we can find to match these teams up against.